how has, since university, how has your outlook changed on what you thought you would be doing versus what you're doing now?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. I think it changed a lot. I think that there's almost a misconception that once you finish university and you go into the workplace, you got it. You know what you're going to be doing. You know what the organization will be like. I think it's almost quite the opposite.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5, part 1 of the Power of Why podcast. My name is Naomi Hiley, and today I am joined by Liora Raitblat. Liora has a plethora of experiences. She currently works in human capital consulting. She is a global shaper, and she'll talk about what that means exactly. And she, in 2015, started her own company with her business partner. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining. If you could talk about your experiences, starting from university, entering the workforce, making sure that you were involved in your community as well, and what that experience has been like.
Sure, so that's a big question. So I graduated from the University of Ottawa. I did my marketing degree there, and I thought it was really incredible. I learned a lot, but what I found was a lot of the experiences and knowledge that I was learning that was really making a bigger impact on me was from my experiences outside of the classroom. So while in the classroom, I was learning a lot of the knowledge and the skills. Being able to apply that outside the classroom is where I found it to be most rewarding and where I received kind of the most, wisdom from. And so I was involved in a number of clubs, like a lot of my fellow classmates at the time, and it slowly kind of got me thinking and got me aware of entrepreneurship. So I was part of a club called Enactus. And so what Enactus was doing was, through entrepreneurship, building a lot of social impact in the community. And I got really connected with what that was, and I got really passionate about that. So there was actually a startup weekend that occurred at the University of Ottawa, where I found my business partner at the time. And we, long story short, created a company called Go Give Back, and it just skyrocketed from that weekend. And what we were doing was we created a mobile app, and from that mobile app we were creating or developing different analytics for nonprofits and charities for mobile donations. And so we ran that for just under 2 years, which was an incredible experience. And you mentioned to talk on how I kind of got jobs after university.
Right.
So during university, I'll take a step back now. During university, I actually was in the co-op program, and then I dropped it because I was just interested in finding my own opportunities and seeing what I was interested in. And being in marketing, I found that there was a few opportunities that I was already aware of, and so I ended up working at Xerox for a semester, which was really neat to get my hands right on to some really neat marketing experience.
Yeah.
And actually, it was just through a job board that I found my next summer job, which was with a professional services firm where I worked in consulting. And so I was actually really lucky enough to have, after that summer internship, I was offered a full-time position almost a year and a half later, just by the time I would finish school. And in that time is actually when I really started working on Go Give Back, and we were able to develop the whole platform. That's my quick introduction.
Amazing. So you touched on a lot of interesting things there, in terms of being involved in the student community. Enactus, I know a lot of people who are listening probably are familiar with the organization. So how did, starting off in first year, second year, is that when the drive and the curiosity came out, or was it once you got settled in your third and fourth year where you started venturing out a bit? Right,
so I think in my first and second year, I was just keen to have different experiences and different opportunities. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. When I entered business school, I didn't really know what that meant. So I was just actually curious to meet new people and just figure out what I was doing. And so I actually joined the marketing club on campus, where I was the first year rep. And from there, I just got involved with the community of people who were doing really cool things. And it was in my first and second year that I was just trying to use my free time and just volunteer and get a taste of what's out there, and really had no idea what I was doing still. So it was just being exposed to different things and being open-minded.
Yeah, and I think university is probably the best place to do that.
Yes, for sure.
Without the risk of not having anything to fall back on, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So if you could talk a little bit about Go Give Back. I know you mentioned briefly. So I know this is an interesting time where a lot of people are interested in starting their own businesses and launching startups, that sort of thing. So as a woman, as a female entrepreneur, what has been your experience in navigating that world?
Yeah, for sure. So I think whether you're female or male, I think it's always a really big deal if you're starting a company.
Mm-hmm.
It means you're putting yourself out there. It means that you're, being open and exposed. So it's always a very vulnerable situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I find what kind of gets you through that, and I feel like this will be almost a theme through my questions or my answers, is just the drive and passion, right? So if you really believe in what you're doing and if you're really passionate about that, then I think you just kind of power through it. And so I find that you're often vulnerable and you feel perhaps unconfident, or you might have low confidence, but it's just about ignoring those feelings. I mean, obviously, not so easy, but it's just about moving forward and really believing in what you're doing, and just pushing yourself harder. And if people don't believe it necessarily, it's just almost having that drive to prove them wrong and say that, no, actually, I can do this.
That's an interesting mindset to have. So you mentioned Enactus earlier.
Yes.
About this social enterprise or social impact side of things.
Yeah.
And then Go Give Back was sort of surrounding that as well,
yes.
focusing on charities.
Yes.
So is that what
the link?
the other? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what though, I think so. So I think I'll credit Enactus to kind of opening my mind, and if anyone's on Enactus here, props to you. But I think it really opened my mind to entrepreneurship and to the power of giving back, which is how I named my company Go Give Back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really passionate about giving back to the community and kind of being aware that I'm in a more fortunate situation where I do have access to education and I have access to do all these cool things, that I have opportunity to volunteer my time. I was really passionate about doing some good for the community. And so from Enactus, we had projects that we were leading within the club, and then moving forward with them. It was really great to see the impact that it had, and I want to be able to continue that afterwards in my own kind of context.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether that's work or being
Exactly.
Other than the drive and the passion, what would be your one piece of advice for? I want to focus on the females and the women.
Sure.
What would be your one piece of advice for those who are interested in starting their own business?
I think not to be intimidated is a big piece of advice I would have. I find that even today there's often situations where you walk into a room or you walk into a meeting and you might be intimidated for a number of reasons,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's gender, your age, anything like that. And I find it's really easy to be intimidated. And it's almost being aware that it's okay to be intimidated. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fine, and being comfortable with that and accepting it and just moving forward with it. So I find that oftentimes if you're intimidated, you might be a little shyer, you might not be as confident, but that's okay and that's so normal. And I think many females that I speak to have this issue often, and it's just being aware, accepting it, talking about it, and it's okay, and just move forward with it.
Mm-hmm. And know that you're not alone too, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how many founders that I spoke to who are women who often find that, walking into a boardroom, a certain number of people is always intimidating. Again, as I mentioned, exposing yourself and whatever your reasons are, I think it's important to just push through it and
Mm-hmm.
accepting, and it's okay. It's never a bad thing. It means that, you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, which is always good.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to your work right now. You work in consulting. What are the 3 things that you look for in a role in an organization?
When I'm applying?
When you're applying, yes.
So 3 things. So I think one of them is the opportunity to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is the opportunity to have a bit of freedom with my role, so kind of touch on different passions. So learn and a bit of freedom. And I think another aspect is, and I guess this is kind of tying into my previous answers, is how can I use it to also benefit the community or whoever it is. What kind of skills am I learning? Is this transferable to other types of positions or other things I'm doing in my life where I can kind of create the connections, whether it's through the network, whether it's through my skills or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So in consulting, what has that impact been for you in terms of giving back to your community?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's part of it is also a network, right?
Mm-hmm.
So through this network, at my work, I was able to find different opportunities where I can give back within my workplace.
Sure.
One of those days is, for example, a day called, a day that we do a volunteer day. So we don't work, we volunteer. And previously to when I started working, I actually was volunteering with Junior Achievement,
Right.
which is a program that allows you to educate youth on financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And so I was able to connect my passion for Junior Achievement with my work here, and actually have a few folks go out and volunteer at these organizations, and we got to teach entrepreneurship to a grade 5 class. So having those opportunities, even if it's not too often, it still kind of allows you to have the impact that you were interested in prior to the workplace as well.
Mm-hmm. And if I can make a side note about Junior Achievement, honestly, I did it as well, and
Perfect.
it was an incredible experience. You get to meet so many young people, like younger than you are, who are so intelligent and so driven, that you may not necessarily see on a day-to-day basis, for sure.
Exactly. It's always energizing to see how much they know, I think, which is really exciting. Yeah.
So in terms of going through university, oftentimes I think, like even for me, you mentioned before, like in your first and second year, you're trying to figure things out. Didn't necessarily, I, for example, didn't necessarily know what I was doing.
I don't think many people do, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you're interested in, so it's perfect time to explore. So how has, since university, how has your outlook changed on what you thought you would be doing versus what you're doing now?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. I think it changed a lot. I think that there's almost a misconception that once you finish university and you go into the workplace, you got it. You know what you're going to be doing. You know what the organization will be like. I think it's almost quite the opposite. So I came into my job not knowing much about the job. I was in a very marketing specific degree, and I went into more of a human capital consulting with change management, which is not quite what I studied. And I think it just becomes using your skills and kind of transferred over to a different role.
Yeah.
So I found that I was almost expecting to really be comfortable in the role. I just finished my degree, and that's not the case. You come and you're right on a blank slate. You don't know what's going on, and that's super normal, and that's okay. And just being open to learning everything, and it might not exactly align to your degree, but you can definitely use the skills to transfer that kind of knowledge over.
And I think nowadays it's so easy to move around quite a bit, even if you start in a finance role, for example, and then want to move into marketing. There are a lot of transferable skills that if you know how to package or leverage,
Exactly.
definitely can be an asset.
Yeah.
So in terms of getting involved with initiatives outside of work, you mentioned the volunteer day, which is internal, but you're also a global shaper.
Yes.
So can you talk about what that is and how you got involved with it?
Sure. So I'll give a bit of background about what Global Shapers is. So it's an initiative made by the World Economic Forum, and it's for youth between the ages of 20 to 30. And there's different hubs across the world. So I want to say most countries actually have a hub now, or several. And the Ottawa Global Shapers was doing their recruitment round a few years ago now, and I just happened to find it actually on LinkedIn through one of my colleagues who was a shaper. And I ended up going through the recruitment process, and I was very excited to have been accepted, I want to say, last year. And so Global Shapers is an initiative that, as I mentioned, is put on by the World Economic Forum. And our mandate and goal is to echo the initiatives that the World Economic Forum is doing within our local community. So this can be tackling things like poverty or homelessness, or kind of making those initiatives more real here and being able to create a real change within our community.
So you got involved by your network and by knowing people who were in it, and you've been doing that for about a year?
Yeah, it's just been over a year at this point.
And what types of, so you tackle certain social issues?
Yes.
What are some activities that you guys were working on?
Sure. So in the first year, we were really focused on Shape North America. So we actually won the bid to host the yearly kind of Shape conference. So all the North American hubs came to Ottawa and Toronto, and so we created this conference to share ideas and connect on what other hubs are doing and really have a bit of a knowledge transfer, meet new people.
Yeah.
Now that we're done that, we've had some really neat projects. So it was focused right in the center on Spark Street.
Okay.
And the idea of this was to have one individual from each country, almost like a Humans of New York style of exposition. And so we'd have their image up with a bit of a biography about, you know, what Canada means to them. And this was actually launched on Multiculturalism Day, which was amazing. And so we had a number of representatives. We had a number of these panels that were actually very large on the street, and we had a lot of people come up and really just be excited and open to the fact that, you know, Canada is multicultural and being open to this. But I think what was most exciting for me was I was walking along the exposition, just seeing what kind of people were looking at it, and I found that there was a man who was, you know, standing by one of the panels for quite a bit of time, and he was filming it and taking pictures with it. And eventually I came up to him and I asked, you know, like, what was his story? And it turns out that they had actually recently moved from a different country to Canada. And to see his daughter on the panel with her photo and her biography there and what Canada meant to her, it meant a lot to him that they were so quickly accepted in the community and that his differences were okay, that they're from a different country and that's okay. And so it was really moving that he was really touched by this exposition, and he stood by there, I want to say most of the first day that we launched it. And so it was really impactful, and it made it a lot more real than just a photo exposition. It made it a lot more impactful.
Human.
Yeah, human.
Yeah. So looking back now, what do you think was like one of the most important things that you did throughout university, like whether that's getting involved to get to where you are today? And what's something you can, like, a lot of my audience members are in university, still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't ever think you really figure it out. But what is something that they can, like a quick tip that they can do while they're at school?
I think, I mean, you hear this again and again, and I don't think it could be stressed enough, is to get involved. I think the fact that in my earlier years I just was open to different organizations, I met new people in classes, I heard what they were up to, and I tried to get involved with things that I thought I was interested in, or maybe that I thought I wasn't, just to kind of have a bit of an understanding of what kind of things I liked, not even from like a subject perspective, but what kind of opportunities I liked. Did I like speaking with people? Did I like looking at numbers? Did I like organizing events? And so from those kinds of experiences, you really get to narrow down into what makes you you and what you would like to continue. And so I think one of them is creating that network and getting involved with all sorts of different activities, both on and off campus.
It's amazing. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your expertise and your experiences in university and in the workforce. So this is part one. We discussed mostly entrepreneurship and career topics. In part two, we'll be discussing mentorship and building relationships with those in your community, people at work, your friends. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much.